is the director of the Doughty Center for Corporate Responsibility at Cranfield School of Management. And David joined Cranfield as director after a 30-year career as a social entrepreneur and campaigner for responsible business. You were really one of the ones who started this whole move, diversity and small business development. And it's also nice to know that The Guardian has recently named David as one of the top 10 tweeters on sustainable leadership. So well done, and hopefully you'll tweet a lot about what's going on here. David, having heard the former speakers and their mounting expectations for responsible business, could you help us make some sense in that? I mean, it's quite alarming in a way, I would say.
Well, first of all, I very much agree with much of what we've heard from Chris and from Ulrika and Peter and Sigal. I think there's now a pretty strong recognition internationally that there is a great deal of questioning now about globalization and a market economy model, and we see that in the reaction against the European Union membership in my country with our Brexit vote. We've seen that in the Trump election earlier in the month in the States, and all kind of dangers in continental Europe in terms of a number of the elections taking place over 2017. And I think that that is a real wake-up call for all of us who are concerned about the importance of a market economy and actually a license to operate for business. And so it is very important for business, particularly for large businesses, to recognize the concerns which are out there. We heard from Sigal the reference to the idea of the working poor. In my country, we're now talking about the people who are the jams, just about managing. And business needs to wake up to those questions. So it's no good having some good works projects, some CSR initiatives, if actually the company has got a pretty dodgy corporate tax strategy. There is no point in having some really great employee volunteering projects if actually there is a pretty questionable executive compensation policy by contrast to not paying living wage and things like that. So I think that there is an increasing scrutiny on business to be authentic and to be coherent and consistent in the way that it behaves in terms of core business activity.
Yeah, I like the word jams, by the way, just about managing. That's a very strong phrase. And let's take it to CSR professionals. You've interviewed, I think, thousands of CSR professionals, we're very proud that even Maala is mentioned at one of your books. I had to say that. So what should CSR professionals now attune to? I mean, take new technology, for instance, big data. What are the opportunities there? What are the new areas to sort of, check and do?
So I think, first of all, as Chris was saying, in some really important advice for CSR professionals, it is very important for companies to set science or evidence-based goals. It's no longer acceptable just to do a kind of, wouldn't it be nice to say we might cut our waste to landfill by 20% sometime in the future, or we may do something by X% sometime on carbon emissions. We have to see, and the best companies are now doing this, setting targets which are science or evidence-based. We're about to publish in a few days' time a paper on that very topic. And I think big data can help organizations to really get the evidence to see whether they are achieving those science or evidence-based targets which they have set. So there is huge potential from big data to equip companies, chief sustainability officers, people responsible for setting the targets in companies to help them. But, and Accenture, the global consulting company, put out a very interesting report this time last week with the equivalent of Maala in my country, Business in the Community. And that report, which you can download quite easily from the Business in the Community website, bitc.org.uk, is called A Brave New World ? And the question mark is, because whilst new technologies as you well know, in Israel, probably in more than most other societies in the world, has huge potential. But at the same time, it's coming with great costs. The fourth industrial revolution, as Davos calls it, or the digital revolution, is estimated, for example, in my country potentially to mean that 10 million jobs may go by 2035. Now that puts huge responsibilities on businesses to be future resilient and to be thinking ahead, how do we retrain people for the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past? There are huge questions, I think, in terms of what will be your responsible business obligations to protect data that you hold on employees and on customers, whether that's against cyber fraud or cyber hacking and so on. So yes, the new technologies creates huge new opportunities for corporate responsibility professionals, but my goodness, it also makes that VUCA world that Chris talked about even more VUCA-ish, because there's a whole set of additional challenges that a responsible business will need to think about in terms of what will be the implications of digital revolution. I did a blog on that, which is on our Cranfield website.
And David, who are your current heroes in terms of interesting corporations that are, you know, adapting to this change, to, I mean, working not necessarily on global issues, but rather on, for instance, those GEMS employees, for instance, or, you know, other areas as well?
Well, at the risk of making you think that I'm actually getting a retainer from Chris from wherever
he's over there.
He's over there. I can't see him now. Yeah. But actually, it's very interesting. If you look at their annual survey of sustainability professionals, which they do each year with Sustainability, the consulting organization and think tank. And by a mile, the world's sustainability experts still say it's Unilever that is actually leading the pack. And I think I say that as an ex-Procter & Gamble brand man, so you'll understand it pains me to say it. But I do think the leadership that Paul Polman is showing both inside the business and outside. And what is particularly interesting is the way that they've picked up what Chris mentioned right at the end, the importance of purpose. Because I see a lot of the leading companies now really thinking very seriously about what is our purpose beyond making profits. Maximizing shareholder value, in my book, is not the purpose of a business. It should be the consequence of a well-run business that over the medium to long term, you optimize returns for shareholders, but it's not the purpose. It's like saying that breathing is the purpose of life. It's essential, but not the purpose. And I think purpose, if it's done properly, is really interesting, important. And what Unilever are doing with their global brands, in terms of challenging each of their global brands to define what is their societal purpose, I think is a really interesting trend and something that we can all learn from. They started with a brand impact process that really analyzed what are the material impacts of this brand, positive and negative, and then let's develop from that a societal purpose narrative.
That's fantastic, David. So we have GEMS, and we go back to a company with a purpose, which is something that we already discussed and will continue to discuss. I think that one of the lessons, I think we definitely need to translate GEMS to Israel as well, because we have it, I think, all around us. And the interesting next phase, I think, is to ask about those companies who are not only recognized on the sort of overall what we know about environmental sustainability, but also about social sustainability as well.
So I think by about now, in my country, the British government will just have launched a review of what's called mission-led or purpose-driven business, with a number of recommendations for action. It's chaired by a very innovative and visionary CEO, Nigel Wilson, who runs one of our big insurers, Legal and General. And I think this whole narrative about how do businesses, large and small, contribute to building an economy that works for all is going to be a very important part of enhancing the business license to operate in the years to come. Because the big challenges which have led to Brexit vote, have led to Trump, might lead to a far-right president in Austria on Sunday, and so on, they are systemic issues which need systemic responses.
Yeah, and that sounds like the right way. David, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for coming and sharing that with us, and we will follow